Well, James, the biggest news of the week in terms of payments, of course, is President Trump's verbal assault on credit cards.
Yes.
History teaches us that price controls don't work.
Right.
I remember myself back when um, Richard Nixon was president.
Mm-hmm.
He imposed wage and price controls.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most vivid memories I have of that era was cars lining up for blocks and blocks just to get gas in their cars.
Yes.
Yeah, just to get gas,
Yep.
right? So this time around, of course, the president is asserting that there needs to be a 10% cap on annual percentage rates, and that will save consumers billions of dollars. But he's not just targeting the issuing side of the business. He's also publicly endorsed the Credit Card Competition Act.
I actually did not know that.
Yes, he had on Truth Social, he posted, quote, everyone should support great Republican Senator Roger Marshall's Credit Card Competition Act in order to stop the out of control swipe fee ripoff.
Wow.
Yeah. So, of course, as we all know, that bill is co sponsored by
Dick
Dick
Durbin.
Durbin,
Right.
AKA of the Durbin Amendment. And it would, of course, require merchants be given a choice between two networks to process credit card transactions over,
Mm-hmm.
only one of which can be owned by Visa and MasterCard.
Yeah.
And similar legislation has been introduced in the House, but hearings on either case have not been held.
Mm-hmm.
Senator Durbin and Senator Marshall did try to tack it onto some other bills earlier this year, or actually no, back in 2025, but that didn't go anyplace. But
Right.
you
Right.
know, and I'm not even I'll be honest. I mean, he can post something on Truth Social. That doesn't mean it's going to be a law.
Well, so I have to tell you this funny story, Patty. So, I had this weird situation where I like the Lex Friedman podcast.
Hmm.
And so I was listening to a different interview, and then down in my YouTube feed comes Donald Trump. And it was from about a year ago. I had no idea that he had been on this podcast. And I'm just thinking to myself, wow, how in the world would that conversation have gone? Because Lex Friedman tends to, for those that don't know, he interviews like deep intellectuals who, talk for 2 to 3 hours about, the AI or the origins of
Right.
the universe or something. So like a Donald Trump interview isn't exactly like his normal thing. So, and it was an hour long. I thought, well, I'm going to take a listen to this thing. So I pull it up and I listened to it. And at one point, so this is a year ago. So he was like, this is when he was running for running for
For
office
president.
and against Kamala. And so he is talking about how Kamala back then was proposing price controls, and he was talking about what a horrible idea this is and how it always leads to communism and all this, verbal rhetoric or
Uh
whatever.
huh. Uh huh.
And I was like, oh wow, that's so I kind of forgot that Kamala had like, kind of floated this or whatever. And then I get done with this episode and then I pull up CC Sales Pro Community and of course somebody had just reposted his thing and I'm like, what in the world? What is he doing?
Yeah.
So oh my,
Yeah.
you
I
just
mean,
never know.
it's crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy. I
Yeah.
think it's his way. He knows that. You know, there are a lot of people. You know, a lot of people suffering financially right now.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And I think this is his way. He thinks that it's, you know, it's 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 all talk. It's not
Right. Well,
necessarily anything that he's doing.
politicians on both sides are tend to be very skillful at showing people they care by giving them empty gestures. And I
Right.
would say this is one of those. I mean, I can't imagine that anybody would support this at all.
I can't either. But
Bernie Sanders came out in support, so that
and
shows
so
you.
did and so did Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, yeah. So he's in
You
alignment
know,
with the far left there. But again, I don't see anything coming of it. The Credit Card Competition Act is actually more concerning to me. But again, as we've discussed so many times, that is one of those laws that is nearly destined for irrelevance, even if it was to pass, just because it's no one has any idea how to implement it, and it would just end up in the courts for 2 decades.
for decades. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, I always like, you know, rack my head thinking how the heck can they implement this law without it costing billions of dollars and disrupting
yeah.
business,
Well, and,
you
and
know?
again, I'm still, I'm still at a loss for even the $100 billion plan. I don't even know what you would do. It just doesn't make any sense. It's like It's just comical every time I see the language for they try to summarize it, and they
Right.
always kind of say the same thing. We're going to allow transactions to be routed over multiple networks. And I'm always like, do you even know what a network is?
Do you even know how these networks work?
Yeah, or just it's like the whole idea is it's end-to-end encryption. So you're like start on one end, but we're going to reroute it somewhere else. It's just the dumbest thing. So anyway, I can't
Yeah.
imagine that anything will come of either of these two things, but definitely putting a lot of kind of spotlight on our on our
It's yeah.
industry. So,
It's the word I was looking for a moment ago was jawboning. It's a lot of
yes.
jawboning that is
Yes.
is riling up people on both sides of the debate.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
Well, moving right along, the Department of Justice. Early on, it seemed as though President Trump was trying to sort of like wipe out everything that Biden had done.
Hmm.
Like
Right.
Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, stuff like that, right?
Sure.
So I was really surprised to read in the website payments.com excuse me, paymentsdive.com.
Okay, right, right.
Okay, that the Department of Justice is pressing ahead with its the case that it brought against Visa in 2024 over Visa's debit card practices.
Mm.
Now you'll recall DOJ has alleged that Visa has carved out an illegal monopoly in the debit card market. It
Mm.
argues that it does this by imposing anti-competitive contracts on merchants and banks, as well as stifling competition from other payment companies like MasterCard and inflating their prices, their fees.
Yeah.
They allege in the complaint they note that 60% of all debit transactions in the U.S. run through Visa, the Visa network,
Right.
um, and 65% of all of online transactions run through Visa. Mastercard is the closest competitor with 25% of U.S. debit transactions, and the remaining, 15% or so are run through PIN debit networks.
Right. Right.
So, I think that's something worth watching because that's
Yeah, for
something
sure.
a lot of DOJ stuff has been cast by the wayside, and this is something that hasn't. So, I think that's something that we really need to pay attention to. Um,
Well, and it
not
also doesn't surprise me either. I mean, I think you know, probably it's not coincidental. These things are happening in the same time frame. Donald Trump, regardless of where you stand on the political spectrum or whatever, his biggest skill set that he tends to want to bring is this deal making capability, and what that usually involves is pressure campaigns on various sides. So I would imagine that if he's looking at causing a ruckus in the credit card processing industry. He's like, hey, what leverage do we have on Visa? Oh, we have this DOJ case. Let's push that ahead.
Yeah, I
Trying to
agree.
get as many things going as possible so that there's a lot of levers to pull to get something done.
Well, as a friend of mine says, just throw things against the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah, yeah. She probably doesn't say things, but we'll go with that for this episode. So,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Uh,
So, okay. So here's another interesting thing. To go on the state, we'll put this move from the federal level to the state level.
yeah, sure.
Checkout.com has secured a banking license from the state of Georgia.
I heard something about this. Yeah.
Yeah, Georgia is unique among states in that it charters banks specifically to provide merchant acquiring services. And so checkout.com is only the third company to secure what the state calls a merchant acquiring limited purpose bank charter.
Hmm. Interesting.
Fiserv got one last year, as did Stripe.
Yeah.
Now, checkout.com, which of course specializes in e commerce transactions, says it handled over $300 billion in payments for clients last year,
Hmm.
which was a 70% increase over 2024.
Wow.
Yeah. And its
Hmm.
client list includes companies like Uber, eBay, Pinterest, and Klarna. Those are sort of the biggest ones that I could pick out of its clients list.
But that's kind of interesting to me, honestly, I don't really know much about checkout.com. I find it kind of fascinating though. It's like, what is their model? Because I understand why Stripe needs a bank charter for acquiring, but if checkout.com, I mean, I don't think that they're doing the credit card processing for Uber.
No, I don't think so either. I think they're just, like a gateway is my sense of
Yeah, but I
things.
mean, they must be making a move into the acquiring side. Otherwise, why would they need the banking
That, well,
license if they're
and
not,
that's what they said in their press release, that we want to be in full control of the transactions that we
Well,
handle.
that's actually really interesting. I mean, so it sounds like checkout.com is getting ready try to pose more of a direct threat to Shopify and Stripe, because
Hmm.
Shopify, of course, has Shopify payments, and then Stripe, of course, is payments. So, yeah, that's actually really interesting.
Yeah, yeah, I thought that was very interesting. So there's a new study out that puts the a price tag on the POS market value, and it's in 2025 the POS market was value was put at $32.27 billion, with the U.S. accounting for 40% of that value. Now we're talking here about, you know, hardware and software, not actual, prices charged for transactions processed.
That's a weird number. So 32 billion?
32 billion, yeah. I know.
Well, because I mean, Toast alone is up pretty high. That's an interesting number. I would think it would be 320 billion or something. You know what I mean? It seems very, very low actually, but I don't know. I have to think
Yeah.
about that now. I guess if you take payments out of it, maybe. But
I
yeah,
think
that's
if you take
interesting.
payments out of it, but and again, I will admit that I'm a little bit skeptical of this particular report because it's a market intelligence firm that's based in India.
Mm,
So,
okay.
I'm not sure how much.
Sure. What to believe, what
Um,
not to believe, but yeah.
yeah, yeah, and they, but what I found interesting was what um, the factors they seek um, propelling the market, because it expects the market to grow to 125 billion or thereabouts by 2023 or 2033.
Mm,
And it says, it's what's going to push it is the need for contactless and mobile payment technologies, as well as the move to cloud-based and integrated POS systems.
mm,
Um, and that the key to all this growth, of course, is going to be small to medium-sized enterprises, which, you know, we all
right.
know that is
Right.
it's a key to has always been the key to growth.
Yes,
You
for sure.
know,
Mm. Interesting.
yeah, yeah, but most of that money, most of that, according to the report that as I read it, most of the 32 billion was hardware sales.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah, that's so fascinating. Now I'm gonna have to like look into this because I'm so curious of like what this is. This 32 billion number. Is it? Are they talking about valuation? Are they talking about? I'm not sure. But that is a very interesting.
Yeah, and let's both
Yeah,
do a little more investigation with
yeah,
that,
we'll have
because
to.
that
Now I'm like so interested in it. So because
yeah,
obviously
exactly.
I'm in that market. So
Right,
it's
exactly.
I find it very interesting. So
Yeah, yeah.
well, very interesting. Well, definitely a busy news week this week, Patty. I
I
think.
still have one more. I still have
Do
one more
you? Oh
report for you,
wow! All right,
James.
let's
I
go.
know.
Let's go.
Well, as everybody knows, we did take a little bit of a break for the end of year
Right. We
holidays.
got to
So
catch up on this today in
we
payments
have to
here.
catch.
So
I have to catch everybody up on what's going on.
yes, absolutely.
And everybody knows, I'm sure, that the federal government is phasing out the penny.
Right.
Right?
Right.
They stopped minting pennies. I believe it was November. And
Right.
one of the biggest reasons is that it costs more than a penny to mint a penny.
Yeah.
In fact, it costs close to 4 cents to mint a penny.
Yeah.
But the end of production doesn't mean the end of pennies. There are still about 114 billion pennies in circulation, according to the Treasury Department.
Wow.
And Treasury issued a memo it's been about 2 weeks now, encouraging POS providers to, quote, collaborate closely with retailers
Mm.
to implement rounding functionality for cash transactions.
Mm.
It recommends rounding to the nearest 5 cents.
Of course. Yeah.
And Square is already on the case. The press release came across my desk about 2 weeks ago, announcing that it had a rounding pilot ready to go.
Yeah.
And it notes that about 19% of the transactions it handles are made using cash, including pennies.
Mm.
Now, even before, this is the thing that I find most interesting, is that even before the last penny was minted, retailers were grappling with a shortage of pennies.
Mm.
we know about the Retail Industry Leaders Association. It's sort of one of the groups that's
Right.
pushing the interchange
Yep.
legislation. They surveyed the 25 largest retailers last year and found that that nearly a quarter of those stores of those chains reported that over 1,000 of their store locations had no pennies in their cash drawers.
Hmm.
Two-thirds said they were already rounding transactions, and to the benefit of consumers, a practice that the trade group said was costing businesses millions of dollars.
Hmm.
Now, Treasury's advice to retailers is to follow guidance provided by the National Council of State Legislators. The NCSL recommends symmetrical rounding, where transactions ending in 1, 2, 6, or 7 cents get rounded down to the nearest multiple of 5. And if the final digit is 3, 4, 8, or 9, it gets rounded up to the next. So like to a
Yeah.
nickel or a dime.
Yeah.
But that's going to be interesting. After I read that, I started paying attention because unlike you, I do still do a lot of transactions in cash.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. I started noticing about half of the half of the stores that I went to, that if it was 37 cents, it'd be like, just give me 35.
Hmm.
And and then if it was like 38 or 39, I'd say to them, "Don't worry about the pennies. I don't need the pennies."
Right. Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I have over here next to my desk a coffee can that's almost filled to the brim with pennies and nickels.
Yeah.
I empty out my pockets at night and I throw them in there, and then once or twice a year, I go to one of these machines where you throw all your
Yeah.
coins in
Yeah.
and
See what you get
you
out
get
of
a
it.
gift card for something.
Right. Sure.
I like it because I get Amazon gift cards.
Yeah. Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
and, that money would be just, you know, floating around under the couch, in the couch,
Yeah.
who knows where. But
Hmm.
I do think it's interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
when you say things like, okay, we're going to stop minting pennies, you really have to like think it beyond, okay,
Hmm.
yeah, it's costing us a lot of money, but what is going to be the impact?
Right. I'll tell you one of the other really interesting impacts, Patty, that our listeners may not have thought of is like if stores start to do that, the current way that dual pricing is
Mm-hmm.
working in a lot of stores will be problematic because
Right.
what's really going to happen is rather than a rounding thing in the POS system, they're going to say, well, we're just going to change our prices, right, to all just be to the nickel. But
Right.
then at the counter, you can't go up, let's say 4% or 3% or whatever, if that
Right.
number is going to end up being in pennies, because then if they want to pay with, well, I guess you could, because then you would say, well, the cash price is still going to be the nickel. So I guess that would technically work, but that is really interesting. Like if like that's actually, I hadn't thought about this before, but yeah, it's almost like compliant cash discounting almost would be the issue, because
Mm-hmm.
if you had a way where you were raising all the prices by 4% and then giving the discount, you'd have to make sure that you raised them and then rounded them. So anyway, it'll cause a little extra wrinkle into something that's always been a little confusing to everybody as far as like, is it 3.846% that we're taking off to get to the
Right.
4%
Right.
number? And so some of that stuff could potentially be impacted a little bit. It's certainly not a huge deal, but just something to be keeping in the back of your mind if
It's
businesses
definitely
start going that way.
yeah. Yeah, it's definitely something to be considered.
Yep, sure.
The ramification, like I was saying, the post decision ramifications.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Well, that's it. That is it for this week, James.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know
Good
we had
stuff.
a big amount of news, but
Good stuff.
I'll tell you what. I just came back to work after taking some time off, and I was amazed at how many stories had come across my desk. Just I think I took last Friday off,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Monday, and it was like, oh my God, look at everything that's happened
Right.
just in those 4
You came back
days.
and said the president said what?
I know. When I saw that, my jaw dropped.
Yeah, yeah, I
I,
bet. So, well, good
so
stuff, Patty. Thank you as always for doing all this research. We appreciate it. Thanks for keeping us up to date.
thank you, James.